Hey guys, and welcome to the Alabama Saltwater Fishing Report, the first podcast to bring you the local fishing report in 30 minutes or less, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. Joe, this week's show was brought to us by KillerDock. As anglers, we put a lot of time, money, and passion into fishing, but most of us don't have a fish cleaning station that we are proud of. Many of us are suffering from dock dysfunction. A rotten table with rusty metal, this is just no good. But the dock enhancement that we've been waiting for is finally here. KillerDock uses marine-grade aluminum to make fabulous fish cleaning tables and stunning canopies that will keep us out of the sun. KillerDock combines durability, function, and design to uniquely upgrade your entire dock experience. Visit KillerDock.com to see more.
Man,
how you doing today, Joe?
You talking about being in the sun. I wonder what that's like.
I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been fishing. Too long.
I'm ready. I'm ready for this winter to be over, man, and start seeing some of those spring patterns pop up and get back out there on the water, get back after them on a more regular basis. I mean, I like my hunting,
but it's over.
It's over. Yeah, I'm ready, man. I'm ready. I'm ready to get back out and hit blue water and see some of that. And speaking of blue water, so let's go talk to Angelo Depaola. He's got another offshore report for us this week.
Sweet,
Angelo. We talked last week about the weather patterns, and I'm looking at the palm fronds waving in front of my window right now. You definitely still got to watch those weather patterns and find a gap to go. But for the folks that have been able to get out, what's been going on offshore?
Man, the big tunas have been hard to come across. I had a buddy of mine that went to the Horseshoe Lump last Friday, fished all day, struck out. There's 4 other boats from Venice over there. He didn't see anybody hook up. So, those big fish, they come and they go like the wind sometimes. You just kind of got to get out there, and maybe you're out there on the right day. But, I'm starting to hear some fish being caught at the rigs, not big ones. There's schoolies, 30, 40 pounders. That's kind of more of a spring pattern that's starting to develop. They're still getting some wahoos and stuff over there. Not too much off the rigs off Alabama. Had some buddies that went this weekend, and bottom fish still guys getting lots of scamps, lots of beeliners, and that kind of got me thinking March 1st is opening day of triggerfish season, and it's 1 per person. So, it's nice to go out there and catch a little bit of variety, get some beeliners, get some scamps, get some white snappers, that
For
kind
sure.
of stuff.
I wonder if the hot weather, I mean, it's been 70 degrees for 2 weeks. I wonder if that's got the tunas messed up, because I usually think about lump fishing cold and rough and ice on the deck.
Yeah, and usually we were talking about this morning at J&M, like usually you think, we're kind of in the last couple days of February, and that bite tends to go on till about middle of March most years, but it's been a really mild February. And maybe we're just going to be rolling into that kind of summer, spring pattern a little bit quicker.
Sure, definitely makes sense.
Well, Angelo, we were talking off air a little last week about chunking, and you've given us some great tips on chunking the last couple of weeks. Maybe those guys over on the lumps didn't have any styrofoam cups with them. I don't know, but I want you to tell everybody what you were talking about chunking that bait on one particular side of the boat. Do you remember what we were talking about there?
Oh, yeah. So, one of the things, especially on a bright, sunny day, even if you've stretched your leader out and you've got a little piece of styrofoam in your chunk, but you're seeing the fish, they're just coming up and they're turning off of it right away. A lot of times what's happening is you're getting some light refraction off your leader, and they're just leader shy and they're turning off. That happens when you get really clear water situations. So there's a couple things you can do to counteract that. One of them is start trying to chunk them into the shaded side of the boat, because now you don't have any sun reflecting off your leader. If the current and everything doesn't set up for that, the other thing you can do is take your washdown hose and spray it up in the air, kind of like you don't want the blaster. You just kind of want, where it's going to create a bunch of droplets, and that's going to kind of camouflage your line. It's going to break up the sun on the surface of the water, and it's going to make it harder for fish to see your line. You don't have to do this all the time, but every once in a while, you get out there and you see the fish, you're like, they just won't bite. Little trick, sometimes it saves the day.
Oh, no doubt. When fishing gets hard, man, you got to be creative. I've done some silly stuff to get some bites before. That's a fact.
And some days one fish is all it takes to turn.
That's right.
Turn a day or even turn a trip around. So, Angelo, Got to get the real tip from you this week, though, on the offshore side of things. Before we do that, I want to tell you about our offshore tip sponsor for the week. It's Trotter Marine. Right now, they still got a major closeout sale going on, getting rid of that 2018 inventory. Y'all can save money on Crestliner aluminum boats and Triton fiberglass boats if you're looking for one for this spring. They guarantee the best service in Mobile and Baldwin County, and they have 18 years of making you their number one priority. They have a full line of truck accessories to choose from as well. Y'all give Ray or Burns a call at 251-679-5959 or go by Trotter Marine in Satsuma on Highway 43, and you can visit them online at trottermarinellc.net. All right, Angelo, you've given us some really good tips last few weeks, and I really like what you were just saying, but what else you got?
So this is my pro tip of the day. So we're coming into triggerfish season, and it's one per person. And you may think, all right, well, we're going to knock that out real quick. Do we just go back in, or do we spend the rest of the day fishing? If you're me and I get to go out and go fishing, I'm spending the rest of the day fishing. And so really, I don't know about you guys, I always feel like the scamp bite really picks up good in the springtime. There's still lots of beeliners and stuff out there. So one of the things that I really like to do is take a diamond jig or a butterfly jig or any kind of jig that you like, or actually the old school amberjack jig with the twin curly tails. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes this time of year, that really outfishes live bait. So we'll put a live bait out on the bottom, but a lot of times you're fishing like rocky structure that doesn't come real high up off the bottom, which I think is just better scamp structure than a big giant rock or piece of wreck or something. And so you're just kind of drifting along. Well, I like to put like a chicken rig and put like a little hoochie squid over the top and put a little piece of squid on it and jig that with my jig up on the bottom of that, because I can pick up some beeliners or even scamps on those. I know some guys, and I really like this idea, and they were telling me about it. They like to use the electric reel because you can kind of put it on a slow reel mode and jig it up about 20 feet in the water column and then just drop it back down. You'll just you can just cover more ground that way. A lot of times this time of year, you just catch more scamps on the jig than you do the live bait. And you still have that out there fishing. You just leave it in the rod holder. Rod holder hooks fish better than we do most of the time anyways.
Definitely. Diversification. I like it.
And it does seem like it seems like you never know where they're going to come from. We've had plenty of days where the scenario that you just were talking about was true. We caught more on the jigs than we did on live bait. And like you said, too, springtime, it seems to be that is more of the case. Not to mention the fact that it's really hard sometimes to find bait in the spring. But we have had just as many days where, and we talked about this some, last summer, with Devin Potts, where he basically said, "Hey, you've got to have live cigar minnows right now. If you don't have live cigar minnows, you pretty well hang it up." So,
I think in the summer that the live bait plays a bigger role. But this time of year, like you guys said, it's just hard to catch it.
Yep. Well, Angelo, thanks, man. Good report this week. Sounds like things are a little slow, but it should only pick up from here. I really appreciate it. I hope you get to go out soon.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one.
All right, Joe, that's pretty good on the offshore report, man. Sounds like some stuff there is kind of getting heated up. I like the sound of that. We're going to head on down to Captain Bobby Abrascato and see what he's doing after his big win at the bog this weekend. Congratulations. How we doing, Captain Bobby?
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. It was a big win. Anytime you can beat that crew we have to fish against, it's a big win. I can tell you that.
That's right. Some pretty steep competition, man.
It is, man. Those are some of the best artificial bait fishermen in our area.
Bobby, tell everybody listening a little bit about the Bog Series and then also the ACFA. That's who puts it on, right?
No, the ACFA is not affiliated with that, although most of the people that fish in it are members or either our members or charter members or both. Like myself, I'm a charter member and have been a member since it started, but they're actually not affiliated. It's a separate group. And they started, we were talking about it not too long ago. I think they started doing these things back in the early 90s. I know I started fishing in 93, and I think they'd been doing them for a year or two. But it's just a group. We get together 4 times during the winter, once a month during the winter months, and fish for trout. It's all artificial bait. And they've never canceled one. That's one of the things they brag about they've never been canceled. And it's never will get canceled. And I can tell you that we have fished in everything you can imagine. We fished in snow last year. We fished in god awful wind, cold. This past Saturday was beautiful. I told him, so we need to cancel the tournament because the weather's too nice,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun. It's it's an invitational deal, and we get together and fish. You can fish wherever you want, and you weigh in 5 trout. You have to catch them all on artificial bait. That's one of the things. It's always been all artificial bait. So it's a lot of fun. And like I said, there's, the people that I consider to be the best artificial bait fishermen in our area are in it and have been forever, So anytime you can top those cats, you've accomplished something.
Well, tell us a little bit about the conditions and kind of what patterns you guys were on, if you can tell us your secrets.
Oh yeah, I'll be happy to. We were fishing slick lures mainly. Was our main go-to lure because we were fishing one of the tidal rivers, and just kind of keying in some shallow water and some little points and things like that. And then we started, because the weather was so nice, there was a lot of boat traffic, which typically is not a problem in these things because the weather's so bad nobody's out. But this one, it was so nice, everybody was out running their boat, and we actually figured out how to catch them kind of out away from where the boat traffic was. But one of the other things that was fun about it is not only did we catch them on slick lures, but we caught them on top waters. And that's the first fish that I've caught so far this winter, or really, I guess we're transitioning now, which kind of tells me that transition might be going on, and we're actually got a number of bites and caught a number of our fish on top water.
That's great.
Well,
what else you been doing other than that tournament?
It was good to see, I can tell you that.
Other than trout, yeah.
Yeah. What else you been doing?
Well, I'll tell you, I've had a couple good trips since then. I went red fishing a couple days, and it's a lot of fun because typically I popping cork fish for red fish, and we caught a number of them on popping corks. But not too long ago, I was drifting some grass and throwing some spoons. And the thing is, people that red fish would go like, "Oh, that's no big deal." But the thing is, I fished competitively for redfish from South Florida to South Texas on the East Coast and all along the Gulf Coast. Use spoons everywhere except here. It's kind of crazy. I don't throw them here. And just because of the way some wind set up and some of the grass I was fishing set up, I started throwing spoons. And you know what? They work here too. It was really cool. That is the universal redfish lure, and it's worked well. It's a lot of fun because I call it idiot fishing because you throw it out and you reel it back in. And so just about any idiot, including me, can do it. You just throw it out there and you reel it back in, basically kind of slow. I use the Johnson weedless, it's a Johnson silver minnow, which is the weedless one. And that's what kind of turned me on, maybe decided to do this because I was fishing some grass. And so the weedless lure just pulls right through that grass without getting grassed up real bad. And the redfish just love it. I think they think it's a crab.
Ah, yeah, I could see that.
It looks like when you're reeling it, it's kind of fluttering and flopping around. It kind of looks like a crab swimming through the water. And as everybody knows that's a favorite meal for the redfish, and the other cool thing about it is it's a real good cover the water type of bait. So if you're drifting like an expanse of grass with no feature to it, or shell even, with no feature to it, the key is covering water, because the fish can be anywhere on that. And that type of lure lets you do that. You're just casting, making long cast downwind and just, like I said, just reeling it back in, and they crush it when they hit it. There's no doubt about it. You got a fish. There's no subtlety to it.
Bobby, I want to key in on something you just said. You're talking about making those long casts downwind. I want to go back to something you've talked about in a previous show, and I'm going to kind of cross compare two different species. You were talking about trout feeding across a current, and are redfish the same way?
No, well, actually, no, they do obviously do that. I think redfish move in versus a trout kind of feeding facing into a current, letting a current bring bait to them. Redfish is more of a forage feeder, but they tend to kind of move up. In other words, trout's pretty much going to hold and suspend in the current, and using, if the current gets hard enough, they'll use a point or a piece of structure or something as an ambush point, whereas a redfish is more of kind of a forager. He's going to go out. Typically they'll feed facing into the current, but just because I think they can pick up on the smells and that sort of thing when the current's coming down to them. But in situations like I had this week, there was really no detectable current. So in that situation, the fish would move any direction relative to the direction of the current. And then when you're using something, that's imitating a small prey like a shrimp or a crab, those fish can eat that coming from any direction. They're going to eat that. They can eat that coming from up current, down current, or the side. They don't necessarily have to hit it from the side the way a trout does with a mullet or a pogey or something like that. So, to answer your question, yes, they do. But when you're using those smaller baits, you can present those in any direction and still be a lot more successful than you would if you were using say a slick lure or mirror lure. You're going to really concentrate more across the current. Whereas with that type of lure, you can do it any direction. The reason I like throwing it downwind, particularly with a spoon, is it's really almost a straight downwind type bait. And what I mean by that, if you try to throw it across the wind, like I've had yesterday and today, wind in the well into the double digits, you can't throw that spoon across the wind. It just skips across the water. So it's one of those kind of baits you just, whichever direction the current is moving doesn't matter. You just throwing it straight downwind because that's the only direction you can throw it.
Right.
This is going to be this is kind of a two-part question then. Something you just said also makes me kind of think back to what you're talking about there. When you're trying to make these long casts, and I think that's something that a lot of folks miss out on, the importance of being able to make a long cast,
especially in shallow water. Well, really important in shallow. Yeah.
If you think about it, it's like your best chance of catching a fish is when you're as far away from them as you can be, but still reach them, because you got no chance you have the least amount of chance of spooking them. So
exactly.
So when you're talking about these trout feeding across the current, and now we're talking about trying to make downwind casts, what do you do when the current's running the same direction as the wind? Well,
then you're kind of at the mercy of that wind, and that's sometimes you have to make an adjustment with the lure when you do that. So if you have the wind, let's say the wind's blowing 90 degrees to the current, which is a situation you're talking about, and you want to cast it across the current, the wind and the current are going 90 degrees to each other in the situation you're talking about. So if you're throwing that lure, like I was just talking about the spoon, across the wind, it's not going to work. It's just going to skip across the water. That's the same thing that happens with the top water bait. That's the same thing that happens with even a grub. So what you do in that situation, you go to a lure like a 52 series mirror lure is one I can think of, or a crankbait, a lip type of bait, or a slick lure. All of those baits will grab the water. So when you throw it across the wind and it hits the water and you start working that bait, your line instantly comes tight, just because of the shape and the design of the lure is going to hold that line tight. You kind of have to picture it in your mind, if that makes sense of what I'm talking about. So
it does make sense, and that's one of the reasons I like asking you these kind of questions. Is that I feel like you've got it right there, sitting there. You just know what to do. I think that's probably second. That's just second nature to you to switch your lure. But folks like me who don't know anything, we got to try to either turn this podcast on or something like that.
But you see what I'm saying? If you were like in the wind we were fishing the last couple of days, if you threw a topwater lure, for example, across the wind's going to pick up the line and the lure, and it's just going to skip it across the water. Whereas if you throw a crankbait, I'm going to use another example of probably even a more dramatic, but a bait like a rattle trap, for example, or a lip type of bait. Picture what happens when you throw that lure, it hits the water and you start reeling, instantly your line comes tight. You try and pull that line tight with a top water or a spoon, your lure is just going to come skipping across the water.
Right, you're going to have that big belly in it.
Right, exactly. But that belly goes away when the lure grabs the water. That's what you have to do, So that's the reason I don't throw those type of lures when I got a situation where the wind and the water are 90 degrees to each other. You have to make that adjustment with the lure.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bobby. Well, guess what? You got the Hey Cap question this week. It was emailed to us at alabama@bestfishingreport.com, and this week it's brought to us by the upcoming surf fishing seminar. Going to be going on Wednesday, February 27th from 6 to 8 p.m., and it's going to be at the Orange Beach Community Center. We got all the contributors to this podcast are going to be there. Got Dusty Hayes, David Thornton, Bama Beach Bum, Matthew Isbell, and Christopher Vecce. They're going to be talking about just anything you'd ever want to know, getting ready for the big spring run we got coming up. So y'all check that out online. That's the Surf Fishing Seminar, February 27th, 6 to 8 p.m. All right.
Ooh, that's going to be that's going to be some interesting stuff right there.
I would think so. It's a lot of knowledge.
That's a lot of knowledge too. And, I get asked all the time about, fishing from the beach or piers and that sort of thing. If you don't have a boat or you just had a few hours to fish, man, I tell you what, if you want to learn, those are the guys to learn it from right there. I can tell you just named the all-star cast of surf fishing right there.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Butch, who's getting that Fairhope rattle, man?
Jesse Watson says, "Hey, Cap, I fish artificial lures for trout the majority of the time when I'm on the water. Typically, when using suspended lures like Miradines, I go with a black or green back and silver chrome sides. Do you let water clarity and sunlight steer your decision when selecting lure color when starting a trip? If so, what is your method?"
That's a great question. And first of all, the lures he's just mentioned right there, that's what I have. Everything I have has a dark back and a silver side. And the only time I vary from that, sometimes in the late winter, early spring, when we've had rain, which we've had an excessive amount. But if you start fishing, for some reason, when you get in that tannicky water, Foul River is a classic example, and I'm sure some of the rivers on the eastern shore that are tannic like that. Sometimes during the late winter and early spring, I'll go to a copper-sided lure, and that's about the only time I vary from the silver sides, regardless of watercolor. But two reasons. One, even in off-color water, muddy water, for example, that silver side is going to reflect the most amount of sunlight, which is going to help the fish see the bait. And that's the only way you're going to get a fish to hit an artificial bait. He's got to be able to see it. So you get that reflection, which is going to help the fish pick up on it. But the other thing is, even in clear water, I always preach going to a natural colored lure. So if you look at a pogie or a mullet, what color sides do they have? They're silver. So it's a real natural presentation. So you're covered either way with that silver side, whether you're in off-color water or clear water. So you got the deal right. I don't really change, and it's even very rare when I go to that copper-sided lure, and that's only in that tannicky water situation, which occurs late in the winter.
Bobby, thanks for the Hey Cap question this week. Next time we have you on, maybe we got a few flounder questions in there. We'll see if we can find
Oh my God. Hey JoJo, that'll be a short podcast. I can tell you that. But I'll tell you this, I saw I don't know if Patrick's been on, but I saw he texted us some pictures the other day of some beautiful flounder he caught on a charter. So he's the guy you got to get the flounder questions to.
That's right.
He's got the hot flounder stick right now.
Got the hot hand.
Got the hot stick.
That's right.
All right, Bobby. Well, thanks, man. Be safe out there. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Man, Butch, I sure do like talking to Captain Bobby. He always knows a lot more than he lets on. You know what I mean? You got to kind of drill in there a little bit, pull it out of him. But, man, that sucker, he really knows how speckled trout and how redfish react to just about every condition out there. And speaking of a guy who really can kind of just takes a scientific approach to fishing, we got somebody on the show we hadn't had in a while. The pier pounder, David Thornton, is with us today. So, David, welcome back to the show, man.
Oh, yeah.
I hear you finally got out there, and
you've been working too much if you haven't been on the show.
I have, yeah. Mom always said work is a 4-letter word, and I know
for the
a lot
birds.
of listeners can identify with that. Yeah,
no doubt.
Well, we relish the time that we get out, especially this time of year. You know, it's not
That's true.
Easiest time to pick or whatever. And I just had a little window where I had an afternoon to go fishing, and I've heard that they had reopened the West End Beach at Dauphin Island, so I thought, well, I'll go give that a try.
Well, tell us about it, man.
Had a lot of fun. Okay, well, it was typical kind of February conditions, foggy, kind of warmish. In fact, I went in shorts the whole day out there on the beach. It was pretty nice for mid-February.
Heck yeah, that's awesome.
And waves only about 2 to 3 feet, and I kind of went down a bit past the crowd that was right there by the parking lot and found a nice little stretch of beach and staked out and started catching a lot of smallish whiting, mixed bag. Ended up with 6 different species, whiting, ground mullet, croakers, spot, silver trout, sweet trout, no pests, no catfish or stingrays, anything like that. The fun part was I was able to, because the fish were small especially, I was able to tackle down as the tide started moving in later in the afternoon. I was able to tackle down and follow the fish up onto the shelf as they came in closer to the beach, and 30-yard casts with my ultralight, and I was able to get into those 3/4 pound whiting and probably caught 50 fish just standing flat-footed on the beach and tossing my 4-pound ultralight. So that's always a good time.
That's
awesome.
It. What about
rigging and bait?
Just a Carolina rig at that point. Earlier when I got there, the tide was low and the fish were further out in the trough, and I was having to reach them with my long rods. Kind of the same kind of thing like Matthew Isbell talks about, where you have to stagger your rods sometimes to get their distance, and after about an hour, that long bite started kind of drying up, and I could tell that the tide was moving up, getting higher, and figured that the fish would probably be following the tide in a little closer to the beach to be feeding a little closer to the beach. So I was able to, throw some smaller tackle out closer and get into them real quick on that. So I kind of switched over.
Fish bites or fresh dead shrimp, or what was you using?
A little bit of everything, yeah. On the long rods, I was using just fish bites after a while because there were so many small fish pecking the bait off. Mm-hmm. And that was the same kind of report as I talked to other anglers when I was walking down the beach. And they all said, yeah, a lot of small stuff, and nibbles and things like that were the reports. So I figured the bite was going to be mostly small fish, which is typical for the west end of the island. But still, I was able to garner up a mess of fish and, cull out some of the larger whiting and ground mullet and even had a handful of white trout too. So that was nice.
What about the pier, David?
Well, the pier's been kind of hit and miss. The typical winter pattern this year has been when the weather calms down and the water gets really clear, it seems like the whiting have kind of teamed in around the pier, and occasionally even a few pompano, redfish, even some couple of speckled trout days when the water's been real, clear. They've been catching them off and on during those periods, with just pieces of shrimp and fish bites. And the pinfish have still been bad at the pier because the water is relatively warm for February. It's in the low 60s probably. And that's, usually February we have middle 50s, along the surf zone, because we get a lot of the strong fronts. But this year the pattern's been to where we've only had, one or two cold nights and then it warms up again. And of course, when it gets rough, the bite shuts down at the pier. So that kind of puts an end to that. So that was another reason I went to the island, because it was a little rough, but not real bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, David, I know you keep an eye on a lot of other surf zones, so to speak, some to the south of us. And I kind of do the same thing. I like to check in on what's going on the east coast of Florida and keep an eye on things over there. You watch those trends, and the thing that's neat about that is it can kind of predict what's heading our way. What's going on in other areas?
Yeah, this past weekend, there was a big warm-up in west central Florida, around the Tampa Bay area, and the water temperature jumped up from like the middle 60s to the upper 60s, around 70 degrees, and the bite of Spanish mackerel and sheepshead has really kicked off for their spring season down there. There were good reports of some nice Spanish mackerel being caught off the Skyway Bridge down there. And also sheepshead has been real consistent down there. Whereas up here, water temperatures lingering, about 5 to 8 degrees cooler right now. And the sheephead bite has really kind of been slow. They've been picking up a few inshore, intercoastal waterway, some around the jetty and the bridge, but none have shown up at the pier to speak of. And the same with Dauphin Island. It's been, of course, they have to deal more with the flood water at Dauphin Island coming down Mobile Bay. And that's another part of the equation. It all kind of comes together, and you have to kind of figure it all when you start kind of digesting, well, gosh, where do I need to go? And, where am I going to fish today or something like that?
Oh, yeah. Well, that leads us right into our tip. This week's onshore tip is brought to you by your local Geico insurance office. Everybody knows Geico has great auto rates, but they also have great rates on boats, ATVs, motorcycles, and personal watercraft. And Geico does even more than insure your valuable items. They also offer on-the-water services like towing, battery jumps, gas delivery, and you can save by bundling these services with your insurance. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent, at 251-445-0053 or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-AL. What you got?
I wonder if Ron can guarantee that I can catch fish next time I go. How much that policy would cost?
Sure, I'm sure he can guarantee whatever you want.
Yeah.
Man, I tell you what, though, I do want to take a second to thank Ron and thank all of our sponsors for making this happen every week. And Ron's been with us since the start, and it's what it takes. It's not free to produce this kind of stuff, and we really appreciate our sponsors making this possible. So thanks, Ron. All right.
Absolutely.
What you got, David?
Yeah, I would think that this time of year especially, because the weather can be so variable, the angler really needs to kind of watch it, make a weather plan. If you're only off during the weekend, kind of watch the weather during the week and watch the forecast and get an idea of what the trends are. Even if you can't go that day, if you stay plugged in to what's going on, look at the reports online, listen to the podcast, maybe the radio show, those kind of things can maybe give you some little, especially last minute tips. Sometimes I'll change direction and end up going somewhere else because I hear about a hot bite or something. And you can watch the conditions as they change. The Gulf goes through these definite periods where it'll rough up for a few days and we'll have a front, it'll calm down. And then the water, will get clear. That's the times that the pier's been good. When it first starts to get chopped up again, those are good days to try the surf. Things get stirred up and the fish kind of maybe get stirred into a little feeding activity. So you can kind of cue in on those little finite bites and things that are occurring, things like changes in water clarity. The water temperature especially is critical as we move into the early springs transitions. So, any kind of thing that you can watch those buoy temperatures and different reports and anecdotal reports from different anglers can give you an idea of what to expect as far as the water clarity, the type of fish that are available, what was a good bait, or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I like that. It's what you're saying, just stay plugged in. And I need as many excuses as I can to be able to read more about fishing, and same goes on hunting. Just stay plugged in, and you start to notice those patterns.
Definitely.
Yeah, right. I think it helps you become, in the long run, a better angler by doing that, and it's a good distraction from those days when there's nothing to do but homegrown work too.
That's right, no doubt about that.
All right, thanks, man. Be safe out there. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, Joe, what'd you learn this week, man?
Man, I think what I really learned this week is that, when you talk to these guys who are fishing every day or have fished for decades or have had a stint where they fish every day for years, they really pick up on patterns of what fish are doing.
Sure.
And I always say they can see around corners because
well, and what the fish are doing based on the weather too.
Right. It's a big deal. And I really like what David said. He was talking about water clarity and water temperature, but I think the most important thing I learned is that you got to stay plugged in. We talk all the time like, well, I hadn't been fishing, I don't know where they are. But these guys are fishing every day and they pick up on those patterns. You got to stay plugged in, whether it's weather, whether it's water temperature, whether it's clarity. You've got to stay on top of them. We interviewed Joey Landreneau at the boat show. And we'll have that show, that interview coming up. Joey Landreneau is the creator of the Slick Lure, and he talked about keeping a journal.
That's a cool dude right there, man.
Yeah, and so I think you got to stay plugged in. You got to stay on top of it if you want to be a better fisherman. And so listen to these guys that do it every day and have decades of experience.
That's true. Yeah, I like that, man. I thought what was cool about Joey Landreneau is we like to fish, to catch fish, and to eat fish. He likes to fish to outsmart the fish.
Right.
That's pretty cool. I like him. Yeah, y'all stay tuned for that episode.
Well, it's very cool.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to wrap it up. As always, please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like us to email you the podcast, just head over to greatdaysoutdoors.com/ASFR, and we'll send you the new show each week. Thank you for all your reviews on iTunes. They mean a lot, and we need more of them. So check us out there, subscribe, and leave us a review.
Keep whacking them.
This week's Fishing Report is brought to you by Angelo Depaola, the Coastal Connection with EXP Realty, your boating and beach property specialist. Check me out on Facebook at Angelo Depaola Realtor, the Coastal Connection, or call me direct at 850-287-3440.
And also KillerDock. Are you suffering from dock dysfunction? Check out a full line of dock enhancement at KillerDock.com. That's KillerDock.com. And also Trotter Marine. Call Ray or Burns at 251-679-5959 or check them out at TrotterMarineLLC.com.
Also brought to you by Geico. Call Ron Davis, Geico agent at 251-445-0053 or visit him online at geico.com/mobile-al.
and also A-Team Fishing Adventures. Check them out online at www.ateamfishing.com or contact them at 251-661-7696. And also Great Days Outdoors, the South's finest hunting and fishing magazine. Pick up your copy wherever magazines are sold or check them out at greatdaysoutdoors.com.